Packers fans, this is the Packer Mentality Podcast. Whether you are new to the channel or you've joined us before, welcome and thank you so much for being here. As usual, before we get going, please help me build this channel and take a minute to subscribe and follow me on social media at Packer Mentality. I watched the film of the Lions game and it was worse than watching the live broadcast. It was just absolutely brutal. If you thought the Packers played poorly, but there might be some redeeming performances that would show up in the film, yeah, that didn't happen. It was really hard to watch. The loss puts the Packers at 2-2 for the season and brings us approximately to the quarter point of the season, or as close as we're going to get with an odd number of games. Let me be honest and say I recorded another version of this episode that was much darker, and I had it ready to post, but before I uploaded it, I thought it over, thought it was a bit too harsh, and I hope this comes off as a little bit more optimistic. Now, let's talk about where this team is and how it's developing. On offense, the offensive line through the first three games, the pass blocking was really good. But the injuries have really started to affect this group. You have David Bakhtiari, left tackle, he's out. Elton Jenkins, left guard, he's out. Zach Tom was injured a couple weeks ago. He's not 100%. John Runyan Jr., your right guard, got hurt in the second quarter of the Lions game, and to his credit, he played through it. But it was clear that it was affecting him. So the entire left side of your offensive line is missing. Your right side of your offensive line is banged up, and it showed. This group that was on the field against the Lions can't run block at all. And it's really hurting this team. A couple of the guys on the field seem to be playing themselves out of their jobs and possibly could see them getting replaced going into next season. One of those guys is Royce Newman. And let me say that I don't root for guys to lose their jobs. I'm just saying that he is not playing well enough to deserve a job. He doesn't seem to be able to run block or pass block. And my biggest problem with him is on some plays, it looks like he's lacking in effort. Josh Myers is wildly inconsistent at center. Some plays he looks okay, and some plays he looks completely lost. Let me circle back to David Bakhtiari. And I want to say that I believe that David Bakhtiari is a great left tackle and a great Packer. But the Packers cannot count on David Bakhtiari to play. This isn't a criticism or an indictment on him as a person or as a player. It's just bad luck with that knee. He's only played one game this season, and he's missed the past three. And now he's having more surgeries. Unless these surgeries are going to drastically change the health of his knee and his availability for, being able to play week to week, I don't know how the Packers can make a plan for the future that includes him as your starting left tackle. Now, there is no reason to cut David Bakhtiari unless you need the roster spot, and it doesn't save the Packers money. Can't trade him. If he's not playing and his availability is always in question week to week, he doesn't have any trade value. And finally, if Rasheed Walker finishes the season and you think he looks like your left tackle of the future, I don't think you can put him back on the bench in favor of a guy that is always a question mark to play. It does a disservice to Rasheed Walker. It doesn't help his development, and I think hurts the continuity of your offensive line. At tight end, and considering that rookie tight ends in the NFL are usually pretty bad, the Packers rookie group has actually shown some promise with Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. But they're obviously they've seen mistakes, and there is plenty of room for improvement and development, especially the run blocking and the route running. The one veteran in that room, Josiah DeGuara, who I've been critical of since the day he was drafted, he's actually been all right. And he was one of the few Packers on Thursday night that wasn't just stinking up the field. He actually played okay. At wide receiver, again, this is a very young group, just like the tight ends, and it's all rookies or second year players. And we've seen the mistakes. Running the wrong routes, not running the routes correctly, dropped passes, just consistency with this group. But there are a couple guys that I want to point out that when the Packers needed a play, needed a first down, needed a big play at the end of the game, a couple guys have really showed up, and that's Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed, he's a rookie, second round draft choice, but I think the future for him looks really good. Now that Christian Watson is back from his hamstring injury, the Packers have to find a way to get him more involved. He was only targeted 4 times on Thursday. That's just not enough for a player with his talent. The question that keeps coming up regarding the wide receivers, would a veteran help this group? A guy to, if he had been there at the beginning of the training camp, could have set examples. And as the season started, help these guys with their route running and blocking and their releases in certain situations. My question is, who would that have been? Packers had a very limited budget, and the choices weren't very good, which means you're bringing in a player that was at best a number 3, but probably a number 4 or worse. And those guys weren't good enough to start for their other teams. So what's the quality there? Is that really who you want setting examples for your young wide receivers? At running back, the run game's been terrible, but is there any running back who could be successful behind this offensive line? Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, Patrick Taylor. Heck, you could bring in Jonathan Taylor. You could bring back Barry Sanders, and I don't think they would be good behind this offensive line. Let's talk about Aaron Jones. He's not just a good playmaker for the Packers. He's their best playmaker. So why doesn't Matt LaFleur use him more? This is my biggest issue with Matt LaFleur. I don't understand why, after a game in the press conference, Matt LaFleur gets asked, why didn't Aaron Jones get the ball more? And Matt LaFleur has never had a good answer. And honestly, the problem is Matt LaFleur. But it sure looks like that we can't count on the Packers to actually utilize Aaron Jones consistently from game to game, which begs the question, you paid Aaron Jones pretty good money to come back this season. Not a good look to spend all that money and not use him. All of that being said, I believe that this group of running backs is playing their last season in Green Bay. I don't see any reason to bring any of them back next season. At quarterback, Jordan Love. I am pleased with Jordan Love. Considering the complete lack of a running game, I don't know how anyone can be too harsh with him. In the passing game, he's still mostly making good decisions. He's got 8 touchdown passes. Where Jordan can be criticized is that sometimes he passes up the easy short pass in hopes that he can get more yardage downfield, which, considering he had great pass protection through the first 3 games, kind of understandable because he had the time. Now, even with the time, the further the pass attempt, the completion percentage is going to go down, and we've seen that. And this group of wide receivers is really, really young, and you not always running the best routes. But Jordan Love still only has 3 interceptions. One was a deep shot on a 3rd and long. One was a tipped pass where the defender made a nice play at the line of scrimmage to tip it. And one of them was a miscommunication on a throw to Romeo Dobbs. And Matt LaFleur did say that the issue was Romeo Dobbs. It wasn't the throw from Jordan Love. Now, Love is also a positive addition to the running game. He has added another dimension to this offense. Matt LaFleur can call a lot of the run plays and some of the run options that Aaron Rodgers just wasn't going to do at his age. Love has shown great mobility and awareness in the pocket, and he's picked up first downs when there's been nothing going on downfield. One of the big things that I like about Jordan is his leadership. He doesn't seem to get down or visibly frustrated when things aren't going well, and that was definitely true on Thursday night. He's getting sacked. Guys are running the wrong routes. I did not see any overt signs of unhappiness with his teammates, no frustration at what was going on. And honestly, I saw a lot of that last season from the previous quarterback for the Packers. And now the defense. So far this season, the Packers defense has feasted on a terrible Bears offense. They got exposed in the second half against a very mediocre Atlanta offense. They played okay against a limited Saints offense that was missing their starting running backs for the entire game and their starting quarterback for 3 quarters, and then got bulldozed by a good Lions offense. Before we talk about Joe Barry, it must be said that the players on the field are not doing their jobs, and that part is not on Joe Barry. Up front, the defensive line, the edge players, the linebackers, no one is shedding blocks. These Green Bay defenders are way too easy to block. Once in the Lions game, once there was a Lions jersey on a Packers jersey, that guy stayed blocked. It was just terrible job of shedding. On the interior of the defensive line, other than Kenny Clark and possibly TJ Slayton, the Packers lack guys that can stuff the run, that can clog up holes, that can basically, engage multiple offensive linemen so the linebackers are free to pursue the running back. However, with Devondre Campbell hurt, we have another problem. The Quay Walker is making a lot of tackles. I appreciate his effort, but kind of like everyone else on this defense, very, very few of those tackles are behind the line of scrimmage or even near the line of scrimmage. Most of them are 5 to 10 yards downfield. And way too often, he is taking the wrong angle, hitting the wrong hole when he's pursuing the ball carrier. Sometimes I don't understand what he's seeing or what he's doing during the play. In the secondary, just like the guys up front, these guys are too easily blocked by wide receivers. And there have been a few too many missed tackles, key missed tackles, actually. And I'm specifically going to call out Darnell Savage. In the Lions game, he had good coverage on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Pass was completed, not his fault. He was close. It was just a good pass, good catch. But then he missed the tackle, and it led to a big gain. Overall, I'm not entirely unhappy with the pass coverage. The injury to Jaire Alexander has hurt. I hope he's back for Monday night because it looks likely that the Packers will see our old friend Davante Adams. On the other side, Rasul Douglas, one of the guys that is not doing his job. He broke his assignment against the Lions and tried to jump a route. And honestly, the Lions had him scouted. They knew he would jump the route, and they completely took advantage of him, and it led to a very easy touchdown. Now, finally, let's talk about Joe Barry and his scheme. With 8 first-round draft picks, I expected more from this defense. He's not putting guys into positions where they can succeed and utilize their strengths. He's getting outcoached. I think good offensive coaches are taking advantage of him, and they're able to easily beat what the Packers are trying to do. Packers want to stay in their base defense, and that base defense is already being exposed for being really bad against the run. So these teams will run will run tempo and no huddle to keep the base defense on the field. Leads to these defenders getting tired. The Lions did it, and the Lions really did a nice job. They got the Packers into the red zone, had the ball around the 10-yard line. Packers were in their base defense, which is fine on the 10-yard line, but the Lions gained 8 yards down to the 2-yard line, stayed in tempo, didn't go into the huddle. Packers could not substitute, and you do not want your base defense playing goal line. Packers needed to call a timeout, get those guys off the field. They did not, and instead stuck with the guys on the field. The next play that was run, I don't know what this defense was doing. There was a huge gap on the defensive line. Packers defensive tackle was over the guard. There was no one over the tackle or the tight end, and Preston Smith is lined up way outside. There's a huge hole on the 2-yard line, and Lions took advantage of it and scored an easy touchdown. I don't know if they were lined up wrong or that was really the call in that situation. Either way, it was costly. I think it's unlikely that Joe Barry gets fired midseason. It's just so bad on the defense. It's hard to say if any other defensive coach could do any better. And I'm not sure there's anyone currently on the Packers staff that is qualified to take over. And who are you going to bring in midseason? I hear the name Jim Leonhard, former Badger coach, former NFL player, but that ship might have sailed a couple of years ago. I don't know how Jim Leonhard feels about the Packers at this point. And would he want to come in midseason? I doubt it. I think, if anything, you talk to him after the season is over, talk to a bunch of other guys if someone shakes free from another team. But we'll see what happens. The good news is that the Packers are 2-2, and that's about where you'd expect for this young team. They have extra time to get ready for their game in Las Vegas on Monday night. I expect a better performance against the Raiders. After the Raiders, they get their bye week. That is a lot of time off to get healthy, correct mistakes, and get their players on the same page. Then they have a run of what appears to be some winnable games with the Broncos, Rams, Vikings, and Steelers up next on the schedule. We'll talk about the Raiders on Friday. Until then, have a great week and go Pack Go.